So I'm just gonna have this. You guys can still see me, right? In a little box? Yeah, okay. So just quickly so I can show you what's going on here. This is my little studio space. I know we probably should have done this before I shared my screen, but here's the chair that was in that recent exhibition that I get to sit on every day. That stool that was in that exhibit is being used. A little tiny house. Can you see that? Yeah. So that's supposed to house future minis. Have a tiny table saw and all that stuff. So it's been really hard to stay focused and stay inspired, but it's something. So I'm trying my best. All right. So the theme of this, or I guess the title of this is called Accidentally on Purpose. And that's just because I feel like that's how my art career has been so far. So this is me at 4 years old, and let's see. Yep, that Home Depot outfit is, I think, a bit of foreshadowing there. So that was probably 98, 99. No, just kidding. I was 4. Definitely 99 or 2000. All right. So these are some photos of drawings that I had made, I think in first grade. And I thought it was hilarious that I added like she, you know. I was already trying to be, you know, super into that feminist stuff, I guess. And don't really know what's going on here, but my first self-portrait, here we go. All right, so just to kind of sum up I think my childhood inspiration in terms of art would definitely be Dr. Seuss. That was one of the few things I read because I loved the pictures. And so during that time, the Butter Battle book, which I thought was hilarious because especially now, it's over a wall and it shows like these 2 little guys here that are battling over a wall. But it was a battle over which side of the bread you put your butter on, which it's just hilarious because I think that is politics. These Sneetches here, it was about how they would not talk to the Sneetches that didn't have a star on their belly. So, you know, a lot of these things are kind of, to a lesser degree, inspired by an actual political type of art, but they're children's things. And I loved that it showed up early on like that, especially in Roald Dahl's books and Chris Van Allsburg. They don't mind going into like the darker side of that. And I think they use children's books as a great example of that. I Spy books, obviously amazing. If you guys don't know what these are, you should get them for your kids if you have them. Also, Legos Lincoln Logs, that's the only thing I could possibly figure out that would be related to why I build so much. So that definitely helped. I'd spend entire weekends in there. All right. But nothing compares to how much the Twilight Zone affected my entire brain, melted it. Okay, so I was born in Fullerton on October 18th, 1996, which is probably scary for a lot of you people. I'm Puerto Rican and my mom is German-Irish. So we moved to California, Rancho Cucamonga, I apologize. In 1998, I've kind of drawn all the time. And so that was kind of how it started. So I met my first mentor, Paul Basenberg, who was my art history teacher in 2012. I was a sophomore, and he checked out my notebook, and I was, you know, we had to turn in our notebooks for class. So when we did that, he saw that I drew in all the margins, and he's like, you know, what are you going to do with that? You know, that's kind of interesting. And I didn't know what to say, but he told me to check out the meeting after school that was happening. And it had something to do with a nonprofit, I guess, like art center that was in Rancho. And I was like, wait, I thought you had to go to LA for art and things like that. So it totally blew my mind. And I went, and then I stayed for 7 years. So there's that. Also, I put in here that I had almost 800 community service hours, and that is true. It is just because I didn't want to be home, but also because I wanted to be at Maloof all the time. So there's that. These are some mural paintings that I helped put together when I was in high school. These are lamasu's, if you guys don't know what those are. they're Assyrian mythical creatures that have 5 legs because they're in motion, and the heads are supposed to be the Assyrian king, but it was a form of protection in front of buildings and things, so we put that on Basenberg's doors. And then on this side here, I was like pointing with my finger, you can't see that. We have this clock here in this little folded face clock thing. So I was able to do these, and then these guys here. But Mr. Basenberg, he happened to pass away from brain cancer in July of 2017. So that was really hard. But, you know, I did eventually get to go to New York and see them in real life. So that was amazing. And it kind of felt like I came full circle. That was great. And I think this is what sums up my high school experience, and just trying to figure out what I wanted to be the course of my life. Starting out not having such a woo, so it turned into something that was much more woo now. But I figured, you know, you may not have the power to change where you come from, but you have the power to choose where you go from there. And that, obviously, there's other things involved in that, but I think if you really want to do something, you can do it. This is kind of what I was drawing right around that time, and starting into college, and by that I mean community college. So when I was still in Rancho and still working at Maloof, these are just some of my little sketches. This is my grandpa right here. This is John Lennon and Bob Dylan, or Bobby D, because we're best friends. And then over here, we got Maloof Foundation, completely changed my life. It was unexpected. Like I said, like I had no idea there was a museum that was just up the street. The impact has been taking up almost a third of my life. And I still work with you guys, obviously. And I'm an apprentice to Larry White, so that has been something that has been, I guess, just really powerful. His whole entire creative arsenal is just extreme. So keeping up with him is really hard, even as I'm in my 20s, he's incredible. So I was able to really find a strong foundation, not to be punny, but it really gave me a point where I felt confident, and I felt like it was safe to explore and kind of immerse myself in this whole entire experience, just being in a museum all the time. Also, I did have long hair. I'm sure this is like, who is that? Is that your sister? My sisters are actually in the audience, so that's great. But they know that I have really thick curly hair, and I had to flat iron it through high school. One of my sisters did my hair for my graduation, so they know. So yeah, I think it's kind of funny. This was just after I got the nerve to be like, can I take a picture with you? And now we're best friends, so. All right, so this is the MTA program, and this is kind of how I got started at Maloof. This will be quick, but honestly, you get community service, you get public speaking. I wouldn't be able to do this if it wasn't for that program. Internship opportunities, and it gives students it empowers them to feel like they have support to pursue the arts. And regardless of anything that art can do for you, I think art itself is meant to just make a more well-rounded person. So, all right. So in terms of Maloof collection influence, because I feel like I was like this little cup of hot water, and the little Maloof Foundation tea bag went in there, and I was like, what? This tea is amazing. So they've got some good tea. So we've got some Alfreda Maloof in there, this is one of her paintings here, and she worked for the Federal Bureau of Indian Affairs and taught art, and that was really cool to me, considering she was in her 20s when she did that and traveled across the country before she met Sam. Larry White, obviously, here's some bird bags right here. You guys will see that later in the slideshow. Susan Hertel, right here. I love her work. And also, I mean, this is just one of my favorite rooms in the house. It's so peaceful, and this reminds me of Isamu Noguchi, how he would kind of just have these hanging around. So there's that. All right, so other influences, because I was thinking yesterday, I think I've been in art history classes since high school with only 1 year of stopping, so like 6 years total of just my brain melting into books. So here is Hieronymus Bosch, the Garden of Earthly Delights, which they actually happen to have a shoe line with Doc Martin, and they are awesome. But if you were to take a little snippet of any one of these scenes, it is the first piece of like surrealist art ever, and it happened to be an altarpiece in a church. So that was crazy. But in terms of art history, I think that's what really cracked open my egg. Because I figured, I'm like, how can artists just be all these different types of things? There's no one thing that they are, you know, and it ranges from chefs to musicians to everything. And so when I thought about it, artists can lead lives that they define themselves, and they leave something powerful behind. I mean, when you look through an art history textbook, you're seeing the images of their work, not just them complaining or something. I don't know. But this quote right here was on Mr. Basenberg's syllabus for AP Art History, and it was just an incredible quote. But art will remain the most astonishing activity of mankind, born out of struggle between wisdom and madness, between dream and reality, in our mind. So I thought that was super deep, especially this is for a high school class. So that was kind of really intense. So this right here is Dada, and it's essentially the birth of conceptual art. And I think it kind of let open the floodgates for irrational art and things that are more satirical in art instead of taking it all too seriously. And I think that was much needed after World War I. But there's a Charlie Chaplin quote. I'm going to say I'm already super into language. It's very obvious. So here are some little sketches and napkin drawings from Sylvia Plath. She's one of my favorite authors ever, especially this one. Reminds me of that Ferdinand book from when we were kids. But yeah, so these banned books, really, I was like, in high school, I found out about banned books like all other high school students, like going back into the 60s. But you know, it's like, oh, if it's banned, I want to read it. So that was the only motivation I had. I didn't like being forced to read things. I liked reading things on my own. So I read everything that wasn't like distributed in class. So coming to community college now, this is kind of what was going on. And I didn't mean to put a toilet next to a chair on purpose. This just happens to be my art that I was making at the time. This is called a throne for obvious reasons. And this is a Maloof lowback that I made in CJ Gillick's class at Chaffey College. And if you guys don't know who she is, she's awesome. You should look up her work. But yeah, I ended up using a recipe from Barry Van Tiger, who sells a lot of his stuff in the Maloof gift shop. And I asked him how to make this wooden like stain. And so he gave me the recipe and it turned out awesome. All right, so kind of getting into our cardboard stuff a little bit. I mentioned Marcel Duchamp. This is him. This is a portrait of him on a giant heart, and it has a little wheel sticking out to kind of commemorate this right here, this guy. I wanted to include that wheel. So, all right. And then on the back, we have this right here, which is his fountain or urinal that was upside down that he placed in a gallery that made all those problems back then. It's called Victim of Chess, this whole piece here. And so this, these are little chess pieces. It has a chessboard sticking out in the back too. So quick story, apparently when he was on his honeymoon, he told his wife, hey, just so you know, I think I'm going to become a chess player professionally and I'm going to quit art. So as soon as they got back from their honeymoon, she divorced him. So then what he decided to do after that was actually do chess for a little bit. And then he re-entered the art world dressed as a woman. And he made it again. So he's just a very strange dude, and I think he's important to history in that way. Here's Sylvia Plath, because we were talking about her so much. A lot of these papers back here, besides the lined ones, are ones that are actually for typewriters. It's typewriter paper that Seth the gardener actually at Maloof gave me. So that was cool. And this right here, again, speaking more about Sylvia Plath, you guys might notice that my interests end up becoming my obsessions, and then it kind of just rolls into my art. So this right here is a bell jar, and it's supposed to represent the quote that is in her book that says, "The world itself is a bad dream to the person in the bell jar." And I feel like a lot of my childhood, I felt like I was in this bell jar where it's all distorted, and you can see out, but you can't go out. But people can see you on the inside, but it's not really you. You know what I'm saying? So when you take off that bell jar, it's really clear. And that's kind of why. Also, the reason why they're not figs, which is what Sylvia Plath would have used, is because I wanted to use an orange, because that's representative of like where we live and grow up. So, and by that I mean the all the citrus and things that are in Southern California. All right, so speaking about obsessions, I really love art, so it's going to keep going. This is where the inspiration came from. Andy Warhol, Basquiat. This was the original drawing that I did prior to making this. I think I made this Basquiat in an 8-hour period. My friend Jordan, if he's here, he can say how long it took, because I was in his room. Okay, so kind of getting into how people have affected and influenced and have become, I guess the most important part of my art experience is the people I've been able to become friends with and things like that. So this is Peter Korn. And again, this is before I was woodworking. And so I was in a dress and everything. And I told him, I was like, oh man, I really like your book. I want to buy it. Again, I do not know who he is at this moment. It turns out that Peter Korn was and is a very celebrated woodworker who started his own craft school in Maine. And this is the book that he signed. And it was in 2014, this was 2 months before I graduated high school. And I asked him to put in my book, give me some advice that you would have wanted when you were 16 years old. And he goes, okay, hold on one second. So he let other people go for a second, and he goes, okay, come back. And then he wrote down, don't hesitate. And that was just like one of the most inspiring things. And I think I really tried to put that into practice. I mean, just considering I'm giving this talk and I've only been doing woodworking for a few years, so it's all very crazy. So speaking about first time, this is 2016, and this is Beverly Maloof right here. Here's Larry. You guys know who he is. These are the wonderful women I got a chance to work with for the Women's Veterans Project through Maloof that Larry works with. And so one of the female veterans dropped out, and they were trying to find someone, and it was getting down to the last day. And Larry goes, well, what about that intern, Lauren? I wonder if she would be interested in doing this. I don't know. She seems like she has the energy for it. And so that's kind of how it happened. And also, it was Larry's fatal mistake in having me bug him and want to work with him for the rest of his life. So there's that. This is the first piece of furniture that I made, and it went to the LA Arboretum in 2017 in December. And the Arboretum, they gave us wood, but I don't think they realized that they had to let the wood dry first before they gave it to us. So I had to wait a few months before I could even start, because this is Dawn Redwood, which all these trees that they had given us were fallen trees. And the money that was raised through the auction and things like that through the show were to go to the tree fund to plant more trees. And so out of 150 artists, 10 people were selected to be in the silent auction, and I was lucky enough to have my piece go last. So that was crazy for my first 2 pieces. All right, so speaking about local art community exposure, in terms of art, if you ever want to try and pursue it, you have to have people, you have to have friends. You really have to network and figure out the people that you want to, I guess, be affected by and inspired by. And all these artists here that are listed are people that have been pivotal in my career, and I'm saying career like I have one, but it's, all these people have got me to where I am now, just being in college and keeping on doing all of my furniture stuff. So all these different places, I'm not going to read them off to you, but thank you to all these amazing people here on the left. This right here is Dan Romero and his and Dina's dog, Henry the Hound. And Henry the Hound's probably my favorite art dog in the world. This is Steve Riemann, and he lives in the desert near Larry in Joshua Tree, and he makes really awesome kinetic sculptures that move, but only slightly. They don't move really quick. It's all very gentle and graceful. So getting back to kind of some inspiration, in 2018, I was able to go with our director at Maloof and a few others, including Scotty, who just recently passed, to see Ray and Charles Eames' house, and it was just completely unbelievable. We were able to go inside, look at their art collections, which you have to make reservations way in advance, and it's not cheap to go in there. So we were lucky that we got a free tour through one of the awesome people that were in one of our workshops early on at Maloof. So she was amazing, and she happened to be a volunteer there, and so she hooked it up. But yeah, in terms of this house in general, it was a house that was meant to be innovative, and it was something that they were interested in because they were already forward-thinking people. They were pushing the limits of what this new product was, which was plywood, and they were still making little contraptions. If you guys don't know, but Richard Neutra, he's a famous California modernist architect, but when Ray and Charles moved from where Cranbrook is, they moved to California, and they met Richard Neutra and all these other people, but they were staying in this apartment with these giant contraptions that they were trying to build to, I guess, learn how to bend all these plywood materials and things. And I just think that's really inspiring because, you know, they're trapped in like a tiny apartment like this. And so they were still working on what they were working towards. So also through them, you know, their chairs, their splints for World War II, they were just constantly making things, and they didn't have to stick with furniture. You know, I mean, I love furniture, but I want to do other things too sometimes. And so they also did films, toys, public communication, but they are a staple in terms of inspiration. I mean, who even does this? Who hangs their paintings upside down like that? This also is by Hans Hofmann, by the way, which was Ray's mentor. So there's me sitting in one of the chairs in their studio, which people aren't really allowed in their studio either. But that was just crazy, and I got to do that as well. So shout out to the Eames place. Thank you guys so much for letting us in. All right, so here's Mr. White, 1962. And I think in these photos, we both share the same waistline. So that's where we're at there. This is him sitting in that first chair of mine. You can't see it because he's sitting on it, but that's what's there. So there's Sam. Hopefully you guys know who that is. Chair guy that we all love. All right, so mentioning those bird bags earlier, here they are. I'm lucky enough to be the person, the only other person besides Larry himself to make these bird bags, so they're really fun. Kind of rusty. I don't think I've made them since probably like a year and a half ago, but if you guys bought any in the store recently, those were the ones that I made. So if you look underneath, there might be a little initial or something. All right. Also, this right here is a sculpture that Larry and I moved from the Maloof Foundation garden back into his studio space and little, I guess you would call it his lawn, minus the grass. All right, so this is the Kotzen chair. So it's named after Mike Kotzen, who makes Kotzen cajones. And he commissioned Larry to make this amazing giant lounge chair. And working on that project, working on something that almost felt like I was working on a car, it was very strange. But working with, I guess, furniture that's not exactly how you're supposed to make furniture is always my favorite, because there's so many complex problems that you have to solve that come up when you're working with compound angles. And I mean, if you look at this, I honestly don't even know how Larry was able to get all this so seamless, right? So yeah, working with a mentor, I highly recommend to anyone. Find them, track them down. You need them. So here's us working on Roz's memorial. And that was my first time working in negative space. So if you were to think about building forms that you don't really know what it's going to turn out like, hoping that it looks like this when you're done. So that was really interesting. Also, learning how to weld rebar, which kind of prefaces my next step in I guess, in expression. So there's concrete, we got rebar. This is Core 10 steel right here. And this is a plaque that Larry had originally made out of clay, and we took it to a bronze foundry, and they were able to replicate it perfectly. Also, shout out to Roz. Thank you for being so awesome to the Maloof for so long. All right, so this right here, Larry again, no surprise. We also have hands-on workshops, and that was amazing. I got a chance to build and completely redo the entire wood barns that are in the upper part of the compound at Maloof. And so Larry and I did that over the course of a summer. And then we started doing, I guess, what would they be called? Demonstrations, yeah, which is where I've met a lot of the people that are in the audience, so that's cool. And so they were super supportive. We got tons of people in after that. We started selling them out. And so I'm super stoked that I was able to be a part of starting that entire program. And I still am very excited because at some point in the future, I'll be doing a women's workshop, but hopefully after the whole quarantine thing, the Maloof still has enough money for me to do that. So, all right. So 1 day, 2 day, and 3 day courses. We don't do week-long stuff yet, but this is Jeremy Sullivan here. He's our awesome wood turning guy. And we have Dennis Hayes. He's not pictured here, but these are his side tables. And then this is the veterans project that Larry does now. This is actually a chair design of mine in the background, which definitely is not there anymore. So here we go. This is in my mom's room right now. This is my side table, and it was a book that I had got from the Claremont Library when I was working there, and this came in as a donation, and they were like, I don't know what to do with it, it's too big. And so what I said was, okay, well, it's going to my car. So because someone donated it, I'm like, okay, well, this is a massive book. It has to be something that's not meant to be used as a book. So I saved it for 4 years and then eventually pulled it out. It is sealed. You can't open this up. And so, I mean, you had enough time, right? Like that's 1952. You had all that time up until I found this book to flip open the book. So it's all sealed. I used Maloof joinery for these little boxes and stuff. And it's not even Maloof joinery. It just happens to be how he organized his boxes and casework. And this is a experiment in trying to make a reaction piece to Sam's early work. I wanted to see how if I can push it in a different direction. And so that's kind of why I ended up making the amoeba chairs. And I also wanted to learn how to make different seats. So I wanted to be able to make upholstered seats that would snap into place like how his did early on. Also because I don't want to spend all of my time making hand-carved seats, which is normally what Sam did after the 70s. So I wanted to experiment with my own designs and things like that with just the basic elements of the turn legs and this seat here and how it's set up. So there's that. I'm sure you guys might have some questions already. All right, so this right here was in the Maloof garden in from 2019, the summer of 2019 up until like last December. So this is my first welding project, and I ended up making this zombie-like Eames chair that looked like it survived the apocalypse, and this lamp, this floor lamp that is non-functional. And we have this TV that's also non-functional, but you obviously have a great view of the entertainment. And so I think I only spent about like $30 to $40 on this. I had some help with the pavers, which I really appreciated. So there's that. Okay, so here's an example of that early Maloof joint that I was mentioning that I misspoke earlier. This is that 1950s one, and I put it on my Bodhi bench. This is the only piece of production furniture that I do because it's really fun, and I take cutoffs and pieces of really long, wide boards that they're just too narrow in terms of width, so I can cut it at a diagonal and flip it. So I'm making this triangular form instead of chopping that stuff down and milling it into square rectangular pieces. And of course, walnut. I don't think I said that, but my favorite wood is walnut. I know it's cliche, but it's great. So in terms of the exposure that I was that I got radiation from, art radiation. Wendy Maruyama's wildlife project that happened in June of 2018. And then 49 California wood artists that also included Matt Hebert and Adam Manley, who's now my professor at State. So I was able to also go and attend the Futures Conference and be a part of that in April of 2019. And that, of course, changed my life. I got to meet every single person I'm a huge fan of that that are my heroes. So including, like people like Mira Nakashima, and a lot of the famous people that are like represented in the house that I've kind of grown up in for 7 years. So that was just completely out of body experience for me. And I also was able to figure out that I wanted to go back to school. I had a talk with Larry and I'm like, I really still want to work here with you, but I don't know what I'm going to do. And he goes, well, you can't do what I did, which he taught at 2 different universities just after working with Sam. And he didn't have a college degree, but because of his experience at the time, people respected that. So he was able to do it. And he goes, no, you need your piece of paper. And so after Wendy's show, I looked up more about Wendy because I was just struck with her work, that I conveniently was able to be the gallery monitor for that show. So I was just in there all the time, just like staring at stuff. So she was head of the department and created an entire program at San Diego State that has been instrumental in kind of forming the craft world to what it is now. And she's trained not only some amazing people, but she inspires way more than that. And so I emailed her and I said, hey, do you by chance have any advice on schools, and what do you think I should do in terms of woodworking and pursuing that? And she goes, oh, well, I ran this program at San Diego. And I was like, what? Yeah, there's a program that's still in California? I was looking at like RISD and all these places on the East Coast that are an arm and a leg, and I need my arms and legs. So I figured, I'm like, well, if I can go here, I can still stay around, I can still be around Maloof stuff, but I'm far away enough from home where I feel like I'm able to kind of explore a new place. So that was amazing. I went the following November and then applied the March after that. And then I'm really glad I got in. Apparently, like, because of who I only applied to one place, which was San Diego State. And so when I did that, I looked afterwards after I got in, I was like, oh crap, that was only a 2% acceptance for transfers. So I was just barely slipping in there on that banana peel last minute. These are some of the Maloof teens that are awesome, and with Wendy and one of her amazing elephant heads. And I don't know if you guys can see that, but they're little tiny pieces of wood that are tied together, and it looks like origami, but pretty much because they're so big, that was her solution to, because they were so large, to make thin wood pieces. All right, so now we're getting pretty close to now. So San Diego State, like I said, I decided I needed to go back to school, especially if I wanted to teach. And through the Maloof, I was able to gain a lot of teaching experience, especially, at the time as like a 20-year-old, teaching older men that may or may not have taught 30 years of woodworking and at a high school level or whatever, even community college. And, I'm telling them how to do something that, is part of the project. So that was really interesting, and I think very beneficial for me to learn how to work around and make people feel like that I'm not trying to take away from their skill or their knowledge, but just help. So there's that. So yeah, it's a new community, people my age struggling and experimenting with art. And even though I've made a lot of things, I'm still feeling it out. I feel like I'm still developing the craft part. So that's what's going on. But it's great to be away from home, from a lot of my influences. I feel like, I've been seeping for too long. And so it was great to kind of finally get out and go and find new people to have influenced me. And so that gets me to here. These are some amazing craftspeople and artists that have kind of changed the game in a lot of ways. This right here is a Nakashima bench. This is an Isamu Noguchi carving sculpture. This is Wendell Castle. And this right here is an Annie Evelyn piece, which I just love that you can press in, stick your bum there, and it makes an impression like you're cracking it like an egg. It's great. This is one of Wendy's pieces here. So you can see that that was part of her wildlife project. And so kind of getting back to Wendell, he was the first person, if you guys aren't familiar with chair stuff, because I'm a chair nerd. So he kind of brought furniture into a fine art setting and kind of was the person that made it known that they can be a part of the fine furniture you see in galleries. This is me when I went to the Noguchi Museum in Queens in 2008. It was very hot. I know a lot of you see me with my shirt tucked in all the time. That's how you know it was hot. This right here is oh yeah, so I'm starting to get into stuff that I've made at school. So this is the talkie table. It's a little side table. I wanted to focus on really minimal joinery, very simple thinking. So I just have a miter here, which is that 45-degree cut on those two pieces, and you put them together, it makes 90. And then just one of those extra legs from those Bodhi tables that I had just laying around. This right here holds that book part in place behind that leg. So you can see that there. All right, and that's black limba. If you wanted to know what kind of wood that is, it was on those seats, on those chairs that had those blue cushions. And again, this is the little stool that's right next to me that has my little radio on it. And the Bodhi bench. This was my roommate's room before they moved in. This right here is the Hart coffee table, which Hart is because of Yvette and her husband, Mark Hart, who own Bunny Gunner now. They really wanted to have a coffee table, and so I designed this one. And you can't see it on the top, but there's two hearts in the wood grain because for one, I mean, I love them. They're awesome. They're a great family. But because I figure I'm like, well, if I'm going to name it the Heart Table, it has to be literal in some sense for me. So there's that. These are maple shelves that are kind of floating. They only have a dado cut behind in this part here, this triangular piece that's sitting in the middle of this mitered table. And if you guys don't know what dados are, they are channels cut into wood with a table saw. So you can get like really thick channels in that wood. So I obviously the channels were the thickness of this piece here. And I guess if I were, it's really hard for me to still talk about my work because I don't really know what to say about it, but these are elements that I wanted to have it so when you look at furniture of mine, I want it to be where you don't feel like it's distracting or it takes away from the room. I want it to enhance a room, and I want it to be something that's approachable and I guess not hurt your eyes. Like I want it to be aesthetically pleasing, but also have that sensitive approach to the material because I want to honor the wood. If I'm going to chop up a tree, it has to be for a very good reason. So this right here is the original design that I drew in like 10 minutes because I had forgot the deadline was the next day because this was when I was still in school. And so I drew this really quick, and so this was supposed to be going on now, but I'll show you what it turned up being because I already finished this installation that will be at the LA Arboretum. That will have a lot of the local artists that you guys might know at the LA Arboretum. So boom, this is the sofa version for that. So it looks fairly similar. I mean, I stuck to that a little bit. We have this little hairpin thing. I'm against hairpin legs just because I know how to make different legs. But also, the main reason I did this was because I was running out of rebar and I didn't want to go back to Home Depot. So, and you guys know how big my car is. It's very small. If you can imagine just me like chopping up rebar in the parking lot to get it to fit in my car, that's what goes on. So I just folded it because I figure I'm like, okay, it like lessens how much I have to weld. So that's what happened there. And this is the TV and the lamp that are also for that. So this lamp would go on that little side table. And this right here is that TV that would, I was gonna have it on a pile of eucalyptus branches and logs. So you just stick it right on there eventually. when we end up getting back to the Arboretum. Excuse me, this is my last piece that I made. And it's a chair that went into the last show that I was in. But it's called Seat of Reflection. And the reason why I made it was because, for one, I had this piece of metal that I got in Dan Romero's metal shop at the time. And I said, hey, can I have this scrap piece? And he's like, oh yeah, I don't even know where that came from. You can have it. And so I saved it, and I was really trying to think of a project where I could use it as a replacement for like the idea of upholstery. So that was something that I really wanted to do, but also it had a new meaning after I did that as the backrest. You look at this and you have all these holes going through, but when you're sitting in it, you don't see that. You know, you kind of don't see the struggle. You don't see like what happened until the person gets up and out of the chair and kind of walks behind it to see the damage. I feel like this is kind of my life now, encapsulating and supporting kind of like what happened prior and where I'm going. Like, it's a forward thinking, it's a very positive reaction to, I guess, get out the last bit of, I guess, that part of my life. I've completely moved on. So it's great. And it does actually reflect, it is a signage that was shot up in the desert. If you're wondering what it was a sign. And it is a sign. If this is the sign you're looking for, here it is. All right, so this is the cardboard series that I made most recently, which I did jazz musicians. I didn't include Thelonious Monk in these slides, but this is Charles Mingus on the left. And this is pulp from padded packaging of those little padded envelopes. It's pulp that was inside for his hair and for his beard. And then this right here, I hope you guys know who this is. This is Miles Davis. And so these two musicians, and also including Thelonious Monk, I made just this January. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I really have been trying to push myself with creating more dimension. Originally, it started as an activity for the Maloof teens and for our K through 12 visiting students. And we, you know, it's hard to have materials on hand all the time in an arts organization. So we had a ton of scrap boxes and things. And I figure, I'm like, oh, well, there's tons of portraits of Alfreda Maloof in the house. I wonder if we could, you know, maybe take cardboard and then stack it up and make like a, you know, something that's in relief, pushing a 2D object to be 3-dimensional. So I just took it and ran. I'm pretty sure they still do this. I'm not sure, but all right. So in closing, you know, I really hope you guys, even if it's not monetary, just being a visitor and attending and letting your kids go to places like this, it's really important. But yeah, it might not seem important, but they're cultural institutions that give space for students to be exposed to a world where they can feel the importance of history and art. So that's what I have to say about that. Yeah. Oh, here we go. There's one last quote for you guys, so you get your fill of extreme amounts of deep quotage from me. But this was a text that Larry had sent me, I think right around the time I started back at San Diego State. So every moment is an opportunity laden with positive and negative. We can choose from the heart or from the head. It dissolves into our future of moments, and they build the architecture of who we become. And I thought that was just like, you can't just drop that on me, Larry, you know? Like, that's just some heavy stuff. So anyways, this is me in one of the last 3 pieces that Sam ever made. This is the Rocking Chase. Pretty sure Rich will kill me for putting him in this. But there's Beverly again. She's kind of sniggering. She's laughing. I'm glad she thought it was funny. So anyways, yeah, that's where I'm at. Thank you guys for listening.
Awesome. Thank you, Lauren. Yeah, so speaking of questions, we have a lot of people have typed up some questions in the chat box, which is awesome.
Sweet.
Feel free to keep those coming, everybody, and we'll, at the rate they're coming, I don't know if we'll get to them all, but yeah, go ahead and type them up, and I will be sorting through these to share with Lauren. So let's see, the first one speaking of Rich, he asked, what areas of art excite you the most at this point in time?
Ooh, okay. I'm most excited by wood because it's still, even though I've been doing it for a few years, it's still the newest thing to me that's going to take a very long time to master. So I'm really on that. But I think metal is definitely something that's piqued my interest, and I like the instant gratification of it. So, yeah.
Nice. So this next question I like from Julia Gregory. It's a very good question. How do you suggest finding mentors? As you know, mentors have been so important in your process.
Yeah. So it depends on what you're looking for. Usually, if you know any galleries around, if you know the kind of the subject that you want to pursue, you can honestly, you can Google so many different people. It's best though if it's in the local area. Oftentimes, if you ask around, like, hey, do you guys know anyone who does this? Do you guys know anyone who does this out of their garage? I mean, a mentor doesn't have to be someone who's like super famous. I mean, anyone can be a master in their trade. You just have to find them. I mean, honestly, I'm very lucky that I was able to kind of be introduced to Larry and then bug the crap out of him for 6 months. But you really just have to ask around. That's just be an active member of the community. And the more you say, oh, I want to do this for the rest of my life, the more people will listen and then maybe say, hey, I know this one guy or I know this one lady that can teach you how to do that. So yeah, I guess that's the best way.
And then if you identify somebody, don't hesitate, right?
Yeah, don't hesitate. Darn it.
Yeah. All right. So kind of a nice follow-up from Lisa Wynn. She asked, what's your favorite thing about working with Larry?
Oh, I think my favorite thing is being at his studio in the desert. I think that is my favorite thing. I'm not going to flash you guys. This is a tattoo that I have of the actual view from his backyard onto the mesas that are in the desert distance, and it's just like gorgeous, and it's the most inspiring place to work on something. And so yeah, I really love that space, but also he's funny in his own ways too.
Nice. Let's see. Oh, we have lots of great comments too. Thank you for those, everyone. This is a good one from Stephen regarding the term applied design. He says applied, which is the program that you're in. He says applied design can be a very broad term. What's the meaning as applied to the San Diego State University program, and what do you expect to get out of it?
So applied design is essentially the opportunity to kind of explore 3 or 4 different media in your pursuit of figuring out which media you want to be fixed at for when it kind of sets you up for grad school, where it's like, okay, here, try metal, try clay, try woodworking. It's essentially, it forces you to experiment with other material. But yeah, applied design is really anything that's 3-dimensional and requires some type of thoughtful design involved. I don't really know what their specific definition is. I would have to pull it up. But yeah, it's really anything that is 3-dimensional. I mean, even for applied design, we get sculpting people in there too. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Okay, another question from John Harvey. He says, what directions are you thinking to explore over the next few years?
What was the first part?
What directions are you thinking to explore over the next few years?
It's hard to forecast. Every year of my life has been completely different. I think every single January, every time the new year rolls around, I think about like the previous new year, and it was completely different. So I think in terms of a direction, I know that within the next few years, I obviously want to go to grad school. I want to keep making furniture. I don't really know. I'm trying to keep it open, mainly because I do want to travel too, and maybe grad school might take me somewhere else, might keep me in San Diego. I'm not sure, but I'm open to it. that's why it's good having friends and networking, because maybe there might be something that might come up and they're like, oh, hey, we know this person. That might be good for that. And so.
All right, and Christy Oates asks,
Oh, yay, Christy Oates.
what is your current studio situation, and how will the current pandemic affect upcoming work?
Oh, well, it's affected it a lot, because I'm not even able to be in a shop right now, mainly because Larry's not 25, and I don't want to put him and his wife, Dee Small, who's also an awesome painter, in harm's way if I'm just like carrying something on my clothes. I don't even know. But I've been quarantining since March 13th, and I've been just inside my breakfast nook in our apartment. I'm not in San Diego right now, but yeah, I don't have shop access, so that's seriously hindered things. I was supposed to have a show going on now in the LA Arboretum. 2 other shows were canceled, and then 2 workshops that I was supposed to attend on scholarship over the summer got canceled, which all these things, yeah, you assume they're going to happen, but yeah, I really miss being in the shop. I think that's the biggest detriment to my mental health too, is not being able to create the way I want to. So that's been hard.
All right, let's see. We have lots of great compliments on here.
Oh, snap.
Jordan asked, what are some untapped mediums you'd like to explore soon?
Ooh. Well, I think fiber. I really want to get in on sewing and stuff, especially seeing all these different artists, even if they're not fabric artists, they've all been kind of getting in there making masks and things. And my friend Lisa, who asked me a question, she's been doing a lot of fabric stuff. So I want to get proficient at sewing. I think that's definitely the first start. So yeah, I want to get into that fiber art, especially for upholstery and things.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. All right, so we should probably wrap it up there. We're up to an hour here. Yeah, any other comments or anything?
For me? Or
Yeah.
okay. I don't know. I mean, thank you guys so much for listening to what I had to say. I'm kind of shocked that so many people were interested. So it's my socks have been knocked off long before. I'm wearing slippers. So thank you guys. And I hope you all are staying positive, trying to stay healthy and safe. I know this is a really stressful time. I think the one thing I do want to say is that especially if you're a creative person and you have been wanting to try to make things, it's okay if you're stuck, because I'm stuck. I can't do certain things. So, it'll all get better. We're all in this together. It's all we can do. So yeah, thank you guys.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing a little inspiration there. And so yeah, thanks to everyone who's logged on. We had a very well attended meeting here. I hope you guys join us again next week. We have Jacqueline Bell Johnson is our guest artist for our next online artist talk. So that'll be a week from today, Friday, same time, 4 p.m. California time. And check out our Instagram for some more online content that we're bringing during the closure. And thank you very much, Lauren.
Thank you guys. And shout out to my family and friends and everyone who has taken workshops that's supporting. You guys are rad. All right. So bye, guys.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Is it okay for me to just jump out?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I didn't know. All right.